Hello, Fosia. Hope you're well. Thank you very much for coming in, having a conversation with me. How's your week been? How have you been?
All right, a bit boring. Same old, with coronavirus, it makes it difficult. You can't go out, just got to stay local all the time. Walk to the beach, on the beach and sort of, because I live in Barry, it's not far, but it's just the same old routine, Since I feel like we've been locked down since March, it's just been the same. We had a little bit of opening, meeting people, feeling free. And then, back again into lockdown. And it's horrible. I feel, frustrated, bored. And I think it's worse for deaf people, I think. Because we, don't see family and people aren't complaining, my sisters and brothers, I'll say everything's boring. They'll be like, oh, it's all right. I think they're coping with it better, because I think that because they've got access to sound, I don't know, like listening to music or the radio or phone calls with friends, whereas I've just got Zoom. That's the only thing we've got, really.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm just sitting around too much, so I'm a little bit fed up, to tell the truth.
I think what you've said there is really important. This is why we are having this conversation, I think, because people are fed up. We're all fed up. And I think last year, I think there was a hope of optimism that we would get out of it, but it hadn't. And it just keep going and keep going, and I think we're waiting. And I think it's been tough, really tough for everyone. You talked about being on the beach. I mean, that might be quite nice to have some kind of pleasure I get from walking on the beach. So you might be quite lucky in that way to have the beach.
Yeah, but it's the same old every time, though, isn't it? I'd like to do something different. Go and see trees or something. But it's just back and forth to the beach. And it's been the same. And it's been raining, so you can't go out, just sitting around.
I mean, I say this because I would, when you live in Splot, there is nothing to do around here. So I'm a little bit jealous, just a little bit jealous that you have the opportunity to go to the beach. But
oh, fair enough.
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
yeah, I know. I just like the variety, I suppose. I'd like to have a variety.
It is tough and it is boring. So what do you think has been the most difficult thing for you in lockdown?
Communication. People wearing masks. It's been impossible. And sometimes I've got really angry because I never ask people to take them off. That's their choice, and it's, risk to their health, etc. That's their choice. All I ever say to them is that I'm deaf. I say that I'm deaf. I'll gesture to people, and some people will lower their masks and take a step back and will try and talk to me, and I'll say, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. But most, won't. And they're speaking through their masks, and I'm deaf, and they'll carry on trying to speak to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I haven't got a clue what's going on. And then someone next to me might hear them and try and explain to me what they're saying. And it's embarrassing. It kind of really kind of knocks your confidence. I don't want to, means that I feel like I don't want to go out. Sometimes, I've got to go out, I haven't got a choice, like shopping, I've got to go and buy food. So I've got to go. Like last Sunday, went to Asda. And I don't like barbecue chicken. So I was kind of pointing, asking what it was, because there wasn't a label. There was, on the display. And I was pointing, I was trying to ask what it was. and they had their mask on trying to speak to me, and I said, I'm deaf. I told them I was deaf, but they made no adaptation to me. They didn't try to write things down or kind of, just quickly lower their mask, say barbecue, just, they could have said something quickly. I'm not expecting them to lower their mask the whole time and have a conversation. I know the risks. But yeah, I was embarrassed. There was a big queue forming behind me, and in the end I gave up. I sort of picked it, I took it home, and it was barbecue, and I had to throw it away because I can't stand barbecue. But it was because of the communication, and they wouldn't lower their masks. So
I
that's
agree, because
I think deaf people have
I
suffered
have to go
because of
shopping.
that.
I have to go shopping, food shopping, and probably my worst experience when I go, because same like you, I'm constantly have to say, I don't understand what you're saying, I need to read your lips, but I don't want to give them a writ. So what do we do? Sometimes I bring a pen and paper and say, look, can you write down where it is? But what I found quite hard, it's mentally tough. It drained me because I've constantly had to say I'm deaf, I'm deaf, and deaf and deaf all the time, and it's just hard. And wherever I go, and I'm sure it's the same with you and a lot of deaf people, and I find that quite tough. So I just want to go home, and because I don't really enjoy it, because it makes me feel
Exactly.
lesser
I
than I am.
completely agree. I just want to go home. And sometimes I sort of, I try and avoid going out because of the mask issue. I just don't want to go. I'll kind of put things off. I think I'll go later. I needed to go to the bank, and I was like, oh no, I'll leave it because of the masks. Last September, I had an optician's appointment. I'd forgotten my mask. I arrived. I had everyone looking at me. I was thinking, what's going on? Why is everyone looking at me? And then someone came up and they had an iPad and they were speaking, pointing, and I was like, oh, I'm deaf. And they were trying to sort of, talk to the iPad for it to translate. And I said I was deaf, and then they went off and chatted, and then they kind of agreed that they would put their mask down. And I didn't ask them to do that. They did it themselves and sort of communicated at a distance, but they did panic. And that's why I get really fed up.
I think the best thing when I go out and I see somebody wear a clear mat, it's like amazing. And for me, it's like great if I could lip read, I could understand, and I don't have to say I'm deaf, and it's great because sometimes when they wear a clear mat, and it just makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. I haven't seen it very much though. It's rare. Most people have got the kind of the solid ones, and might step back and kind of take it down. And then others are just adamant they will not remove their mask or lower it. And it'll just be like what was saying. It's like last Sunday where they just sort of didn't care that I was deaf, and there this big queue forming behind me, and it's just embarrassing. So, in the end, I bought something I didn't want. It was like barbecue, and I hate barbecue, and I just threw it away. And I was like really angry with them. I was just asking what flavor it was. That's all I wanted to know. But yeah, they're speaking behind the mask. And I could see that they were speaking behind the mask, but I'm deaf. I can't, couldn't see what they were saying. And I gestured several times that I was deaf. So, in the end, I just gestured I'd take 4 of them and went home. And I was really pissed off that day. Sorry, I shouldn't swear.
Yeah, I totally connect with you, totally. And I'm sure that a lot of deaf people, every deaf person would connect with it. And one of the loveliest things I find is talking to deaf people about it, because I feel safe talking to deaf people. and and sometimes I need it, and we need it to talk to deaf people, because we are so used to I suppose we are tactile people. We use our hand. We like to be in the physical debate, and it's difficult doing it on Zoom or online. And I think for me, I think it's probably one of the most important things for me in lockdown is having those conversations with people like yourselves. What has anything been the most important thing? What's been the most important thing for you? I mean, in lockdown, if there's any.
It's been good to sort of, communicate with family through Zoom and having that contact through Zoom. I thought with lockdown it was going to be a problem and I wasn't going to be able to keep in touch, but Zoom has been brilliant. Myself and my daughter, she lives in Cardiff.
You live where?
And she has a flat. So she lives in Grangetown. And Jay is in Bristol University. So we've been able to keep in touch through Zoom. So that's been one good thing. I've kind of had that reassurance and I felt sort of safe. I've been able to keep in touch with my kids through Zoom.
And at a mum or at a parent, you might worry about them.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd be devastated, if we sort of weren't able to keep in touch.
Yeah.
That for a long time that would be sort of awful. I mean, before, obviously there was that sort of brief period when sort of we came out of kind of lockdown and then went back into lockdown in, December. But the two kids came for Christmas. They came for Christmas dinner. And I wanted them to sleep sort of in the house, but it was better for them to go back because of the risks. We didn't want things to get worse, so we all agreed. We just spend the day, and in the evening that they'd go back.
So, am I right saying both of your children in university? Yeah, one in Bristol University and one in Cardiff University.
No, so my daughter's working, and she lives with her boyfriend in a flat. And then Jack, he's got a job in Bristol and university.
Because I was going to ask you whether how if they are when they're in university, are they affected by COVID? I mean, did it affect the way they're studying?
Oh yeah. Yes, that yeah. And again, they're pissed off. Yeah, but they haven't moaned, but the word is pissed off.
Because
just sitting there in front of the computer all the time, limited sort of choices to be able to go out. Yeah, so yeah, they're fed up.
I'm the same, because now I'm a father. My child, I know she's only 3, but she's missed out on 6 months or 4 or 5 months of nursery, and they should be in their prime of their life, learning, and being with their children, being with their friend, and doing these things. But it must be so hard for all the young people. So I definitely feel that. So we talked about education, and we talked about our children in school. So could you tell me a little bit about? I know what you do, but could you tell me a little bit about what you did?
Okay. Good question. Okay.
Keep it short if you want.
So, first of all, I was shielding. So I didn't work for 6 months because of health issues. And then when we went back to normal in September, so September just gone, I went back to work and it was tough. With the masks, it was really tough, and we have to follow very strict rules.
So what was the normal job at what?
So I work in a school.
Sorry.
I'm an LSA. I'm a learning support assistant.
Do it.
So in Penarth. You've got St Cyrus, and then you've got the school next door. It's a special needs school, so I work there. And it had quite an impact on me, you know, the masks, you know, trying to work out what was going on, trying to communicate with the children.
Man, yeah.
Or, you know, I was sort of a little bit, you know, upset by it, really, you know, how to communicate. You know, then I had an interpreter, but with the masks, it got very, very complicated. And so, you know, it was very difficult and disorientating. And then my boss gave me a clear mask, but it used to steam up. So again, you know, I was back to square one. And then I had a face shield, but the rule said that you had to have a mask. So, you know, it was impossible. What could I do? So there was 3 members of staff sort of agreed that to kind of, you know, for talking to me, we'd lower masks, you know, and make sure a distance, but it was difficult. You know, it was very difficult. You know, I know, you know, we had to follow the policy, and, you know, it has to be strict when you're in a school with the, you know, the masks, the hand washing, you know, we're kind of repeating these things all the time. You know, we had to respect the rules and we had to follow the rules. You know, and even though, you know, they were aware that I'm deaf, but, you know, the rules were the rules, and, you know, had to model it for the children as well. So, you know, I got used to it, and we would lower the masks just for conversations and sort of, you know, put them back up again. You know, if someone wanted to speak to me, so, you know, we wouldn't be there chatting for ages or anything like that. No, you know, it would be sort of quick communications, and then working with the children, putting the mask on, and then someone would sort of give me instructions or whatever, and so it'd be sort of up and down, but it made it very complicated. And again, kind of
Imagine.
my feeling of being fed up, you know. So it was a struggle, you know. It was sort of like really wore me out, and, you know, the same thing day after day. You know, I just want coronavirus to sort of hurry up and finish. I've had my vaccination. I had that kind of 3-4 weeks ago. So because I work with vulnerable children within the school, so we were all vaccinated. So that has kind of made me relax a little bit. And, you know, I'm hoping that will be successful.
Have you had your second jab yet?
So I've had the first. The second one I'll have in March.
I can't imagine, Fosia, how tough that might have been in school. I mean, it's bad enough going to a food shop, but with your own work, it just, wow, I mean, it might have been so almost traumatizing. You have to do that. Of course, you have to think about the children as well. I mean, I get school have certain rules, but yeah, wow. So are you on half term now, or are you so what situation now?
Yes, I'm on half term now. Yes, thank goodness.
What happened now when you go back? I think.
So normally I have 8 children, but there's 2 children at the moment because their parents are doctors. So we're kind of doing rotas of days of work. So we're not working full weeks. March 5th, I think it's going to be the full class back. And, you know, we'll be back to the kind of, you know, masks, etc.
So you're saying there will be a full class, so that's obviously going to be making it more difficult for you. But would you do more one-to-one, or would that make it different for you because you have to kind of the math situation?
I mean, sometimes I do one-to-one. I mean, yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Some are quite independent, and I can sort of sit and sort of observe them, and when they need help I can help them. You know, some of the children, you know, are quite bright, you know, and with the sort of cookery things or whatever, we, you know, I'll be pointing to the instructions. You know, and the children would get used to each other as a group, you know, starting, but for those who started in September, you know, normally take a couple of months and they get used to each other and to the staff. But, you know, with all the social distancing, the masks, everything, it's been difficult. But it's about, I mean, you know, the children understand, you know, they're kind of respecting the rules. They understand that they have to wear masks, they have to wash their hands regularly, but they're not allowed to mix with other classes. So they know that they have to stay within their own class, and I have to stay within that class as well. So for 6 hours, I've got to stay with the same group. There's no mixing of groups. You know, we know, we're not worrying about communication with other groups. We're just staying together as one unit, as a class. And we become more used to it then, sort of develop that relationship as a kind of core group. But then when we had the sort of second lockdown, Christmas, we sort of went down to 2 kids. So, but you know, I know it'll be fine, you know. You know, I'll have good days and bad days. You know, there'll be sort of days where communication is a problem, and there'll be other days which are good. And it's very up and down. You know, I'm not saying that it's all bad. It's kind of a bit of a roller coaster, really.
So obviously, let's forget about COVID for a moment. I think otherwise we could end up talking about COVID. Can you tell me more about your teaching journey or how you became a teacher? I'm really interested in how you end up in, I don't know the name of the school, teaching.
So I've been teaching for like 28 years. So there was one woman who asked me to go away. I'd never really met anyone in the hearing world before, because my brother and sister are both deaf. The 3 of us always used to sign together. So my brother and my sister are deaf. So there's 3 of us. Plus we went to a fully signing school, and we'd never really mixed in the hearing world, very little. Mostly we were in the deaf world, you know, and a BSL signing world. And then a friend of mine was going away on a course and asked me if I would take over teaching her class. And I'd never really sort of been involved with hearing people and met hearing people. I was like, I've never been in the hearing world. How am I going to communicate with them? No, you'd be fine. So I was kind of dropped in at the deep end and teaching this class of hearing people. And I was like, oh, hello. Writing things on the board, you know, writing my name on the board. And I was like, that's me, that's my name. And then sort of gradually, I kind of fell in love with teaching. You know, I loved the challenge.
Yeah.
You know, because those teaching hearing people who couldn't sign at all, it was like, you know, trying to spoon feed them like babies and see them develop. So I really like that. I kind of like doing level 1. I prefer doing level 1 to level 2. I liked those, you know, teaching those who have no sign language whatsoever. That's always a challenge. And I've been doing it for 28 years.
How many years?
28 years. 28. 28.
28.
Yeah.
Wow.
28 years.
A long time.
And then, but with lockdown, it's the first time I've had a year off from teaching sign language. So I've had a year of not teaching because of lockdown.
Yeah, wow.
Which has been nice, but hard. You know, it is hard work. You know, making sure, you know, I'm quite fussy. I like people's signs to be perfect.
It must have been so lovely to the children you'd be teaching from when they were younger until they left school.
Oh yeah. You know, I love working with children. You know, for 11 years I worked with deaf children. It was the best then. You know, I wasn't kind of, it wasn't a case of looking after them. You know, and back then there was no mobile phones and sort of, you know, emails and things like that. People would actually write letters. you know, and I actually wrote to Ashgrove School to ask if I could volunteer to work with deaf children there. And then I went to sleep, and then I sort of woke up, and there was someone knocking on the door of the flat, and I opened a letter, and it was a girl who I taught in the school. Kind of, I'd missed the person, but they were saying that they were asking me to interview to go and work at the school rather than volunteer. And I asked the social worker to phone them. So I went on the Monday, had the interview, and they asked me if I'd like a job, and I said yeah. And they said not voluntary, a paid job. And I was like gobsmacked. I can remember being outside with the children, and it was like so many deaf children, you know, because normally you meet 1 or 2 deaf people at a time, but this was a whole group of deaf children. And there was one boy came up to me, tapped me, and said, when I grow up, can I get married? And I said, of course you can. Of course you can get married in the future. Yeah, you can get married. And he told another one, she said deaf children can grow up and get married. And then they were passing this message across, you know, on. And they said, oh, you know, when I grow up, can I drive? And I said, of course you can. I said, there's lots of my deaf friends drive. I don't drive because I'm not interested. I don't want to drive. But I have lots of friends who can drive. And then he was like, oh, when I grow up, I can drive and I can get a job. And I was like, yes, there's lots of jobs. People do carpentry, work in garages, work in art. There's lots of jobs. And he, you know, was amazed, you know, and that was when I saw deaf children need role models. The head teacher then was there and watching and kind of beckoned me over and said, oh, this is brilliant. You know, you're such a kind of role model for these children. So yeah, it made me feel good. And they were asking me all these questions. Yeah, and if they were naughty, I'd say. They were saying, Fosia caught me, Fosia caught me. Oh, I used to love it. But that sort of died out. It became a school for autistic children rather than deaf children. But yeah, I preferred it when it was sort of working in a school for deaf children, but they've all been mainstreamed now, which I disagree with.
And the beautiful thing about teaching, you never know what to expect when you come into school. Every day it's completely different. And you know, I used to teach, as you know, I used to teach in Barry Boyd. In fact, I taught your done. I think your done within the same school where I teach, and I used to get so excited and so nervous.
Yeah, he told me that there was a deaf teacher.
You never know if you're going to kick off, and you never know if a child will come up to say thank you for helping me with this particular project. And I think that's why the most beautiful thing about teaching. And what I'm trying to say is, it's lovely hearing you doing all this and hearing those stories. Do you think there should be more deaf teachers in the education system, and why there isn't?
Yeah, because I mean, it was just me. You know, for all those years, I was the only one. You know, and it's brilliant to have role models, you know, for those children to sort of have aspirations for the future. You know, rather than sort of, you know, worrying about what will happen in the future. You know, it's good to have those role models. You know, same for hearing children. You know, and think, oh, I could do this, that, and the other. But who have deaf children to look up to? You know, who's there for them to look up to? So I think it's really important. You know, obviously it's, you know, down to the council, you know, but it's something that, you know, we've pushed for, but nobody's listened. You know, in the end, you just give up. You know, and I think it's very sad that sort of, you know, kids are being mainstreamed. So the quiz. to raise money for deaf children to come together, sort of, there's 4 that I'd never seen before, who are deaf. It was like a fundraiser at the pub, and I was asking them. We kind of sort of, there's like 4 young people on one table and kind of 4 older, and we sort of swapped and created different groups for the quiz questions. And they were like, oh, no. And we were kind of offering, but they were like, no. And we sort of did the quiz, I don't know, different questions. And then you swapped over paper. And when I looked, there was, there's nothing there. And I asked them, where'd you go to school? And I think it was Lanishan, actually. And I was shocked by their kind of, their lack of knowledge. All the answers were wrong. When I was 11, I had very little kind of, knowledge. I'd kind of come to this country.
I moved from a.
And then sort of, but I've learned more than them. I'm not being big-headed, but I was angry by the amount, the lack of knowledge that they had. I started off with nothing. I didn't even know my name. I couldn't speak. I couldn't sign. And sort of, it broke my heart, really. That was like 3 years ago when I saw, the lack of knowledge that they had. And can't blame them. Got to blame the council. They really should have, maintained a school for deaf children, because that would have been so much better. And I'm living proof. I'm living proof of that. My brother was 15. Really, he only had 3 years of school. And he struggled. And I was lucky. I was kind of started my education at 11, so I had a good kind of 5 years, whereas my brother only had 3. My sister, who's deaf, she was 4, so she kind of grew up with the education system. But my brother, he was so frustrated. He had a temper. He was always fighting, and that was through frustration. But now he's married with kids, settled down. But before, he was all over the place. It was because he couldn't read, he couldn't communicate. And he used to say to me, you're lucky, you're kind of, you're better off than me, because I had more education. But remember, I was 11 and he was, 15. So we only had a short time before he left school. So he was always getting into trouble, into fights. And I understand that frustration that he felt. And it's sad. I mean, now he's all right, he's married with kids, he's got a job, he's built himself up.
You've had something been on my mind for a while about having a deaf brother and sister. I'm fascinated in a way that what would you like with the 3 of you growing up? You're very much, I imagine you were very much into your own world. And I'm just interested about the 3 of you, if you don't mind talking about it.
So my sister, she was a baby, but me and my brother, we were always together because we were both deaf. We're a big family. There's 10 of us.
10?
So yeah.
6 siblings?
6 were born in Somalia. 4 of us in Wales here. So in Cardiff. So 6 lived in abroad. The 4 sort of hearing brothers and sisters were kind of ignored. I was always with my deaf brother. He was, everything to me. We were, neither of us went to school.
At school in Wales?
The other 4 went to school. So this is in Somalia.
Oh, Somalia. Okay, okay.
So I was born in
At what
Somalia.
age did you leave Somalia?
11 and a half. So I moved when I was 11 and a
So,
half.
sorry, I'm interrupting you. I'm really sorry. So you were born in Somalia, and you're saying that you never went to school in Somalia.
No.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Is it
So
because you were
earlier
deaf?
I was saying that I couldn't speak, I couldn't sign, I didn't even know what my name was. I didn't know how old I was. And then when we moved and I started education, I realized my name was Fosia. So it was the first word I learned. And people were asking how old. I had no idea how old. And people were saying 10 and 11. And I sort of realized, oh, okay, I'm 11 and a half. So yeah, didn't know before that. And then my brother, so earlier, so myself and my brother, we'd create our own signs. We created our own, signs and gestures, like, come over here, no, go away, all the rest of it. We created our own communication system between each other. So my mother always kind of gestured food and bed and things like that. But it wasn't full communication. There wasn't, a language. I remember family coming over, give you a hug and a kiss, and I'd be like, what's going on? They might be sort of, I saw that the furniture was being sold. And I was like, what's going on? What's going on? And then we, got the flight to Cardiff. I didn't know what was going on. There was like a party with food, and all the furniture was being sold and everything was going from the house. And I was like, what's going on? There were suitcases, and we had our own chickens and goats and things, and everything was being sold. And the goat was I was crying, going, no, that's my goat. It was my best friend, the goat. I always used to go out and stroke it, but everything was disappearing, one by one. But then we moved, and then I realized why. My father was actually worried. My father was a ship worker.
That in the docked.
Yes. Well, in London, really. So my father was always going back and forth. But my mother was by herself. She was upset. She, with all the kids, it was hard work with the three of us being deaf. So, when we were sort of, my brother was always trying to sort of escape and leave and wouldn't come home. My deaf brother would go off, all day and not come home till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. My mum would be worrying. It was difficult for my mother to cope, and she was finding it hard to communicate. She was trying to tell me you needed, to come home at a certain time, but she found it really hard. So when we moved, that's when we started to understand more communication, and my mother was happier. It didn't matter that we signed. What was important to her was that we were communicating. And when she saw that, my mother would be asking my sister, what are they saying? What are they saying? What are they saying? And I was like, they're communicating. And she was happy, because before we were kind of miserable. We said nothing, we didn't communicate. And we sort of, now we were using our voices, we were gesturing, and, it made her a lot happier.
It's really fascinating hearing you talking about it and what experience. I feel like we could talk about it for much longer.
Yeah.
But, I wanted to have a break from talking about COVID. Could be talking a lot about COVID, and it come to my final question. We talked a lot about the barrier of going to the supermarket, the barrier of, I suppose, being in the school, and it's been general difficult. So if you, UK or the world is not in a really good place at the moment, and I've kind of like what would you be? How would you imagine what would be in the next few years? What would be your reset? You know, if you had your way and done the changes you talked about tonight about the mat, you know, and the problems. I mean, I think the obvious thing would be death awareness training, and then maybe we wouldn't have it issued. So how do you imagine that? What would be the new normal, if that makes sense?
Really, in my dream, and what I've been dreaming about for years really, is for that all people can sign. You know, if all people could sign, hearing, deaf would all be equal. You know, there wouldn't be that disadvantage, there would be equality. You know, it's about, you know, I can teach it's like going into the bank, going to the doctors, receptionists, you know, it doesn't have to be all staff, but, you know, 2 or 3 staff who are able to sign. Then the barriers would be gone. You know, the barriers would be dismantled and we could communicate. You know, I know we'd need an interpreter for like in-depth, you know, detailed conversations, but for small things, you know, having to book an interpreter and wait for an interpreter for a 2-minute chat, we don't want to do that. What I would love is for people to be able to sign. That's it. Yeah. And that's been my dream, you know, always really, you know, and that's not a sort of, you know, just a post-COVID thing. That's always been my dream, you know, because that would ease my anxieties. You know, I could go out confidently. You know, I could be kind of more out there, not having to be withdrawn. You know, I sort of, you know, because I know my confidence goes up and down, it ebbs and flows. You know, it's, you know, sometimes some days I'm all right, other times I'm not. I mean, my partner's the same, and he's, you know, he can speak a lot better than me, but he doesn't like going out and sort of meeting people because he hates asking people to repeat and things like that. You know, you have to be really assertive sometimes as a deaf person, and it just wears you out, you know. You know, going to the bank for trying to sort out something really small but not understanding, and you just end up walking out. You know, so yeah, just over simple things. My dream is for everyone.
I think that's the best answer you could give, because, you know, you
know, because I don't want to rely on my daughter. You know, she's 23. You know, she's got her own life. Yes, for example, my boiler broke down. You know, but who's going to phone for me? How can I contact, you know? In the end, I had to phone contact my daughter to ask her to phone on my behalf. But I want to be independent.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of video calls now, and lots of companies kind of use sort of sign video and things. But for small insurance companies, you know, they're not on the list. You know, I'm going to have to ask my daughter to make a phone call on my behalf. And, you know, where's my privacy? You know, I don't want her to worry about things that she doesn't need to know about.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I'd rather be independent. So that's why in my dream world, everyone can sign. So I can have that direct communication and not use other people, rather than having to ask my daughter to communicate on my behalf, you know, or make phone calls on my behalf, you know, and I feel really guilty. You know, I'm always like saying sorry. I'm always apologizing.
Why was sorry?
You know, why? Why should I be?
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing that too much. I feel bad. And my daughter says, "Oh, don't worry about it, Mum, don't worry." But I want to try and kind of leave her out of it, you know, leave her to her own life. So that's something that annoys me a lot, and it makes me angry.
Yeah. Wow, I mean, I think it makes sense for me to think about, you know, we need BSL in our curriculum in Wales, because if you have BSL in our curriculum, there'll be more Fosia in our school, and that to me is the most important.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know, And I've asked previously, oh yeah, we don't need it, we've got this, we've got that, you know, we've got a hearing person who can sign, and it's just like,
Yeah. I just want to say it's been absolutely amazing to have this conversation with you tonight. It really, we've known each other for quite a long time, and I've never really had this conversation with you other than banter or you teaching me some sign language. So it's lovely to have this one-to-one conversation, and
yeah, no, you're right, we haven't really had
brilliant.
a proper conversation. You know, like with your play,
Yeah,
louder, not clearer, thought that was amazing. You know, so you know, I know you've been through hell the same
that's
way
why.
I have.
Yeah,
You know, it's just been sort of different, but you know, going through the kind of struggling through the oral system, you know, not having sign language, sort of access to
and I think whether
communication.
you speak or whether you sign or whether you're hard of hearing, I think everybody's connected. At the end of the day, we're deaf and we face those barriers. I'm not the only one. Yeah. I just want to thank you very much, Fosia. Been brilliant, and I think. Do you want to carry on? Do you want to say something, or?
You know, and I'm not the only one. You know, there's so many people who are suffering. You know, all of us. You know, but we can have empathy. You know, we have similarities, and you know, we can help each other and support each other.